Get ready for transcription in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, start. This court in JK Private Limited versus New Kesar A Hind SPG and WVG Company Limited has held that once a winding up order is passed, the assets of the company under liquidation are passed under the control of the liquidator, whose statutory duty is to realize them. Thereafter, the creditors are paid out by the liquidator from the sale proceeds of the assets of the liquidated company. The creditors have to be paid in terms of waterfall or priority mechanism. Therefore, payment has to be made first in terms of Section 529 of the Companies Act to overriding preferential creditors, then to preferential creditors in terms of Section 530 of the Companies Act, and lastly, payment has to be made and distributed pari passu among the ordinary or unsecured creditors. This objective and intent is also apparent when we examine the company court rules, as per which the liquidator is to fix a date on or before which all creditors of the company are to prove their debts or claims and to establish any title they may have to priority under Section 530 of the Companies Act. Not only this, the rules enable a creditor to claim interest up to the date of the winding up order and, in certain circumstances, payment of interest subsequent to the date of winding up. There is, however, an exception to the twofold method, as has been held in Dena Bank versus BP Parekh and Company and others, which we will subsequently elucidate. This brings us to the interpretation of the expressions debt due and payable in Section 531A of the Companies Act. The interpretation is no longer debatable in view of the judgment of this court in Rajratha Naran Bhai Mills Company Limited versus Sales Tax Officer Pari, which has approved the view taken by D.A. Desai J. in his judgment in Sales Tax Officer Pari versus R and Mills Company Limited and another, a judgment which we respectfully submit forms the foundation of our reasoning and ratio in the present case. This court in R and Mills Company Limited, agreeing with the views expressed by D.A. Desai J. in Sales Tax Officer Perry, overruled the judgment of the division bench under challenge for several reasons, to hold that the words debt due occurring in the first part and the words as such here. Therefore, for a government debt to be covered under Clause A to Section 531 of the Companies Act, it must not only be a debt due, but it must also be a debt due and payable within 12 months next before the relevant date. The requirements of the latter portion of Clause A to Section 531 of the Companies Act are dual and cumulative, which is debt due and payable, and not one that is due. The debt due must have become payable at any time within 12 months next before the relevant date. The debt due and payable prior to 12 months next to the relevant date is not a preferential debt in terms of Section 531A of the Companies Act. Such debt will rank pari passu with ordinary or unsecured creditors without any preferential treatment. In this regard, we quote the following passages from the decision of this court in R.N. Mills Company Limited as such. We have gone through both the judgments afore referred to very carefully and minutely, and have heard learned counsel on the conflicting decisions. There are wide ranging decisions and discussions in the interpretive process relating to the word due occurring in the earlier part of the provision and the words due and payable in the later part, and whether they are different expressions meant to convey differently or they mean the same thing. With due respect to the High Court, we feel that relevant and important considerations and material, though available, which could go to interpret the section purposively, was overlooked, and at this juncture we wish to put it to use. In A. Ramayya's The Companies Act, it has been noticed that Section 530 of the Companies Act 1956 has been largely recast and amended in the light of the following recommendations of the Company Law Committee in paragraph 218 of their report. In this connection, we should like to refer to a memorandum that we received from the Central Board of Revenue on the question of a priority to be given to Crown demands generally and in particular to arrears of income tax, super tax and corporation tax. It was suggested that there should be no time limit for the preferential payment of these Crown debts, and that Section 230 of the Indian Companies Act should be amended accordingly. The practical difficulty of giving effect to the suggestion is that it would place a great majority of the unsecured creditors of the company at the mercy of the income tax authorities, inasmuch as whatever may be the nature of the security on which they have lent money. The report very rightly lays stress on this point and says that the status of the block development officer and his qualifications should be higher than they are at present. Unless you have this, the checking will not be very reliable. You appoint a committee to evaluate the work that has been done, but that committee will have to depend on the statistics collected by the block development officer and their assistants, and the committee says that checking on the spot is at present extremely inadequate. Most of the checking is done at the desk of the block development officer and not on the spot in villages. It goes further to say that the figures are known to be satisfied by Gram Sevaks, sometimes at the instance of certain specialists. I do not want to go on with that story further. I have referred to these things in order to show how much effort has been made in order to make our community development blocks and National Extension Service work successfully. We have to concentrate our effort in view of the shortage of indispensable material, forgetting that material and forgetting man of such status as can be fully trusted by us. Full stop.